Hi all of you, very good evening and welcome back to the lectures on physiology by Dental Amaze Academy. Today, what I'm going to teach you is about a little complicated, but if you understand it well and good, it becomes very easy. Okay, it will just give a very good perspective, a very good connection between lots of parameters being used in cardiovascular system. Like, there are pressure curves, there is ECG, there is heart sounds at the same time. So all these will be connected together by using a very important diagram which is called Wiggers diagram. Okay, the name of this diagram is Wiggers diagram. Okay, Wiggers diagram. Okay, and what comes under that I'll tell you, but before that I'll just teach you the diagram. Otherwise, simply mugging up what is the components of it will be very difficult. Okay, so I'll draw the graph. Okay, and I'll teach you what comes under that, and then definitely it'll become much more easy to understand the components. Okay, now it's considering dentistry, it's probably slightly at a higher level, but we can't say because it's a very basic thing. It's nothing related to pathology. It's much more towards the physiology. And as you all know, image-based questions, lots of image-based questions come in the especially the INI-CET exams. And if you analyze the last year's physiology exam or INI-CET exam for MDS, you would see that lots of questions has come from physiology, so you can expect any question from here. And if you understand this, it's very simple, I would say. Okay, it's very simple, no complications at all. Okay, so let us start right away. Now initially we'll be considering, okay, I think I should be drawing the heart as well, a very simplified diagram of heart I'll draw. Okay, let this be the chambers of the heart. Okay, and this is the, let this be aorta. Okay, and there are two, okay, atrioventricular valves. Okay, majorly we'll be considering the left ventricle, which is high pressure system, compared to the right ventricle, and we'll be seeing first the pressure inside this ventricular system, left ventricular system. Okay, so let us start right away. Okay, so the pressure inside the ventricle. Okay, now before that, okay, we are considering the atrial systole, ventricular systole, and ventricular diastole, and we are representing them graphically. Okay, so let us start. Now here, so this much comes when atrial systole. Okay, atrial systole, from there goes the ventricular systole, then ventricular diastole. Okay, so now the pressure inside this left ventricle when there is atrial systole will be high or low. It will be slightly increasing. I won't say it's high or low, but it will be slightly increasing because the blood is being pumped during atrial systole. The blood is being pumped into the ventricle. Now before coming on to this video, okay, I want to tell you something. You should be already have revised the lectures on the cardiac cycle. You should have revised the lectures on ECG. You should have revised the lectures on JVP. So if you have revised these three, then only watch this lecture. Otherwise, this could get a little complicated. Okay, so don't revise them and then come back to this. Okay, otherwise, okay, joining things into perspective will become difficult, and I'm not anyway going to explain them again in detail. Okay, in this, I'll just give you, I'll connect things off. So as I told you, when there is an atrial systole, when the blood is being filled into the ventricle, the pressure inside the ventricle, though ventricular is not in systole, though ventricular is not contracting at that stage, due to the filling of blood from the atria during the systole, it's like the blood is being filled, slight pressure increase will be there. So let us see, like now the pressure is slightly increasing in the ventricle. Okay, the pressure is slightly increasing in ventricle, and then it will just fall off. Okay, because slowly, because there is no going to be huge filling, isn't it, at the end stage during the atrial systole. You know that before the atrial systole is where the major filling of the ventricle takes place in the cardiac cycle, isn't it? So there is a slight increase in pressure and then slightly it comes down. Okay, now begins the ventricular systole. Okay, now begins the ventricular systole. So this is where when the ventricle contracts, there is a very high pressure increase. Okay, it will reach up to 120. Okay, you can see, okay, I've shared the actual diagram or actual Wiggers diagram in the group. Okay, so you can check that to get a much better perspective, because my drawings is basically for you to understand. It will not look very artistic, so you can check that, keep it in front of you. So the pressure increases, it increases up to 120. Okay, the ventricular pressure increases up to 120. Now another very important thing which I want you to realize here is, okay, we are talking about ventricular systole, but there is one more thing which is happening here, atrial systole, isn't it, at this phase? Okay, and due to the filling of blood only, the ventricular pressure went high. So we have to talk about that a little bit. Okay, so I'll be using a different colored pen. So again, as atrium is contracting at this stage, atrial pressure will be increasing. So it will be increasing proportionately equal to the ventricular pressure. Okay, because so you have to very clearly understand the difference, why the pressure in atria is increasing and why the pressure in the ventricle is increasing. The pressure in atria is increasing because of the atrial systole. The pressure in ventricle is increasing because of what? Because of the filling from the atrium. So it proportionately increases, but it decreases at a much higher stage. So right away, okay, right away, when the pressure becomes lower in the atrium, you could see, okay, hope you can see that, okay, this marking, okay, let it be, it was proportionately increasing, but at one stage it went slightly below the ventricular pressure. Now when the pressure in this chamber is low and this chamber is high, what is going to happen? This atrioventricular valve is going to get closed, closed, okay, because the pressure is lower here and pressure is higher here. So right away in that stage, right after the filling takes place, as you can understand, the closure happens. So why this closure happens? Because the pressure went slightly down. So I'm writing here this, there is closure of AV valve. Okay, so I'll just write it here, atrioventricular valve closure. Okay, atrioventricular valve closure at this level. Then, as I told you, the ventricle systole takes place and it reaches at its maximum. Now, there is one more thing. So we just talked about atrial systole, we talked about ventricular systole. There is one more thing, what is pressure in the aorta. So initially, the pressure in the aorta is at the range of, so here the pressure starts from 0, went to 120. Now in the aorta, the pressure is starting at 80. Okay, the pressure is very stable. Okay, it's just 80. Now when the pressure in the ventricle becomes higher, so it's increasing, isn't it? So now, for example, if it was here, it is what, 78 or something in the ventricle, but still the pressure in the aorta is 80. But at this stage, when it is increasing at this stage, somewhere, what happens is pressure in the ventricle is increased to a level higher than aorta, isn't it? It's increasing, but this is stable. So this is increasing. At one level, the pressure in the ventricle becomes slightly higher than the pressure in the aorta. So what is going to happen? The pressure is higher in here, okay, and it's lower here. Okay, so what happens? This valve opens. Okay, so one thing very clear now, when the pressure increases above atrium, this valve closes, and when the pressure increases above aorta, this valve opens, because basically what is to be happened? Pumping, isn't it? So this has to close and this is to open. Simple. But why this happening? Because the pressure goes above the aorta. So this is one phase of the curve. Okay. Now, like the atrial pressure again, both of them will go together. Okay. Both of them will have a simultaneous increase in pressure. Because why? Why the aortic pressure is increasing? Why is ventricular pressure increasing? Because of ventricular systole. But why is aortic pressure increasing? Because the blood is being pumped into aorta at a very high pressure. So both the pressure in the aorta will increase, as well as the pressure will in the ventricle also will increase. Okay. So now what we saw here was, which valve opened? Aortic valve. Okay, aortic valve opened. So here we saw two things: aortic, atrioventricular valve closed and aortic valve opened at this stage. Now, one thing which we have to understand here is, here this valve is closed, isn't it? and till you reach here, the aortic valve is also closed. Okay, here the AV valve is closed, and till you reach this phase, the aortic valve is also closed. So this much area is what is called as isovolumetric contraction. That is where both the AV valve as well as the aortic valve is closed. Now they will ask you uh, diagrammatic questions like this. Okay, just they will give you a marking and they will ask you what is this area. So this is the area where we call isovolumetric contraction, because both the valve is closed at this area. Okay, so you can see in the picture representing like this, and so they are showing this area is the isovolumetric contraction area. Okay, this much area. Just see the picture out there in your book. Okay, I'm not marking so that it doesn't become too much complicated, but hope you got the concept here. Okay, this is the isovolumetric contraction. Okay, I'm taking a little time so that you can understand. I'm sure many of you haven't studied this during your UG days. Okay, so now what we saw was isovolumetric contraction and thus opening and all. Now the pressure increases in the in the aorta as well as the ventricle, and it reaches a particular maximum. And does the pressure fall is due to diastole? No, diastole hasn't started yet. So there is a pressure fall. Okay, I have very little space to draw the pressure fall here. So the pressure fall is because all the blood from, or not all the blood, but lots of blood from the ventricle has gone to the aorta, isn't it? So now the ventricular pressure has to fall naturally, isn't it? The pressure will fall. Okay, imagine to this phase the pressure is falling. Okay, now what about the aortic pressure? Aortic pressure will have a proportionate increase. And you know, at one level, aorta has got very high, good amount of blood. So definitely, there is going to be a phase where the pressure in the aorta is slightly higher. Okay, pressure in the aorta is slightly higher, and that phase, so the pressure becomes higher here and lower here. So what is going to happen? First thing what is going to happen is a quick backfall of blood. Okay, because pressure is high here and low here, isn't it? So there's going to be a quick backfall of blood, and so there is going to be a dip, a quick dip in the aortic pressure. Okay, very quick dip in the aortic pressure. Okay, so I think the diagram should be drawn. So let it be like here. Okay, let it be like the slight higher pressure is there in the aorta at this phase, and there is a quick dip. Okay, because of backflow, and right at that moment when there's a backflow, you have the aortic valve closing again. Okay, right at that moment you'll have the aortic valve closing again. Just keep this in mind. Okay, aortic closed. Okay, because of one is dip for backward flow, and as you know, pressure is higher now here. So definitely it has to close. So that there is a dip is there. I'll explain the aortic curve separately. As of now, just understand this Wiggers diagram. Okay. Now there is a dip, and there is going to be a fall. Now again, now this is closed. This valve is closed. But now large arteries like aorta has got a very thick muscle, okay, and it has got an elastic recoil. Okay, there is an elastic recoil kind of thing, and it will push the blood forward. So this elastic recoil will cause a secondary increase in pressure. Okay, very important. Secondary increase in pressure, a slight increase in pressure. Okay, because of this elastic recoil. But definitely all the blood then goes from the aorta to the systemic circulation. So naturally the pressure will again fall, and it will reach the same level. Okay, it will reach this 80 again, and it will just be stabilized. Okay, so what we saw was along with ventricle, the aortic pressure increased. Okay, and initially it was when the ventricular pressure increased above aortic pressure, the AV valve opened, then the proportionate increased. Then at one particular moment when the blood in the ventricle is lower than the aorta, the pressure in the aorta is greater, so there is a backflow, there is a dip, and then there is an increase. So at this moment when there is a backflow, the valve is going to get closed, and we have got a secondary recoil, and then the pressure further falls. Okay, so that's about the aortic and ventricular pressures. Now one more thing I just want to tell you. Okay, before that I'll explain the atrial pressures now. So we have studied one component which was ventricular pressures. The second is aortic pressure. Now we are going to discuss about the atrial pressures. Okay, initially we saw that due to the atrial systole, the pressure was increasing. Then when the blood came down, the pressure will come down, and then we saw at a particular moment AV valve closed, isn't it? And if you have gone through the lectures of JVP, you will see that when there is a closure of AV valve, that flaps gets hit onto the atrial side, and there is going to be an upward stroke, isn't it? And this upward stroke is known as C, and this one is called A wave, isn't it? Atrial part I'm talking about, and there is an upward stroke, okay, which is not as high as this, definitely, no doubt. Okay, so there will be an upward stroke which is called a C wave. Okay, C waves, because of the flaps being hitting on the atrial side, the pressure increases, and then definitely there is going to be a very much fall, which is called a Y descent. Okay, and then there is going to be filling of atrium because of from the pulmonary circulation, or from the if you see the right heart, it's from the vena cava circulation, or if you see the left heart, it's from the pulmonary circulation. So definitely when there is filling, then there is going to be an increase. Okay, I want to just complete the ventricular valve. Okay, sorry, ventricular side. Okay, so let us just extrapolate it down, so that, okay, now, so what we said was filling of atrium. So when there is filling of atrium, there is going to be a pressure being increased naturally, and this is called as the Y ascent, isn't it? This is called the Y ascent. Okay, X dissonant, Y ascent. So you have seen the JVP lectures, hopefully. Now, the pressure is increased. Now the ventricular pressure was falling and atrial pressure was increasing. So at this moment, see what is there. Atrial pressure is higher than the ventricular pressure. What is going to happen? Atrial pressure is higher and ventricular pressure is lower. This is going to open up. Okay, the same thing. Okay, this is going to open up. So we have here, okay, which is the like AV valve opens. Okay, AV valve opens. Okay, and the cycle will continue. Okay, then it will again go for that filling phases. Okay, this now we are going to go on to the ventricular diastole. But very importantly, you see aortic valve is closed, isn't it? AV valve opens. So AV valve is opening only here. It was closed here. AV valve is closed here and it opens only here. So till that time, AV valve was closed, and here aortic valve is closed. And this is the phase of relaxation actually. Okay, got it a little wrong. Okay, so there is the relaxation. So I should be drawing it slightly onto the relaxation side. Okay, I'll just rub it off. Okay, now hope you understood the concept. Okay, now so it is not there, it is somewhere here that AV valve opens and you have a relaxation where both the valves are closed. Okay, because the opening is only here. So this phase is called as iso. So somewhere here you will have, okay, somewhere here you will have an isovolumetric relaxation. Somewhere here we got isovolumetric contraction, isn't it? So that is the most important thing among that. Okay, so you can see here rapid ejection and slow ejection and all in the picture. I'm not explaining it, understandable, because contraction is taking place. And now what happens is diastole. So in diastole, the pressure definitely is going to come down for the ventricle because it's relaxing, isn't it? And then the same phase will start again here. Okay, the atrial contraction and everything will start again. Okay, and definitely what is going to happen to the atrial pressure? So if you draw it here, what was happening in atrium? Atrium was getting filled, but now the AV valve opened, so all the blood will flow into the ventricle, isn't it? So slightly, I would say a slight increase in pressure will be there. It won't be a straight line definitely. Okay, it will be probably a slight, not very, so it's like kind of thing. And the atrial pressure will fall proportionately because atria is losing blood. Valve open and losing blood. So it will just go along with it. Okay, it will just go along with it. But more important is this area and where it reaches the diastole. Okay, so AV valve opens here. Okay, so it's very simple. Initially atrial stall, so the pressure slightly increases the ventricle. Then when there is higher pressure in the ventricle, AV valve is closed, increase. At this stage, you know, the pressure goes above the aortic pressure, so the aortic valve is opened. Then there is going together. Then finally there is a dip in the ventricular pressure below the aortic pressure, or I would say increase in aortic pressure above ventricular pressure. So aortic valve is going to get closed, and then there is relaxation taking place, and this isovolumetric relaxation, when all the valves are closed, it's called isovolumetric relaxation. And then you saw here there is atrium. What happens to atrium? Initially there is contraction, atrial contraction, and then there is decrease, and then when there is the closure of the valve, there is a hit back, so there is a C wave, and then descent, then again increases because of the filling of the atrium from the veins. Okay, and then it goes high at one level. The pressure in the ventricle due to diastole is very low. Okay, one thing which is happening is it's diastole, but there is no filling taking place. Okay, so it's because it's closed. When it's closed to what one particular level, the atrial pressure will go above the ventricular pressure, and AV valve opens. Okay, then the filling of the ventricle, so definitely pressure in the atrium will come down. Okay, atrial pressure will go down because it's losing blood. So this is about the atrial pressure curve. So three curves we discussed: ventricular pressure curve, aortic pressure curve, and atrial pressure curve. Now there is something known as ventricular volume curve. Okay, ventricular volume curve. So initially you would see the volume, because atrium is pushing the blood into the ventricle, because this valve is open, isn't it? Atrial contraction, valve is open, so definitely the volume will be high, or I would say volume will be increasing. Okay, now when AV valve is closed, there is nothing coming from atrium, and on the other side it is pumping the blood onto the aorta, or I would say, okay, not pumping the blood onto aorta, sorry, there is isovolumetric contraction, isn't it? So the volume is going to be stable here. Okay, isovolumetric, that is what it's called, isovolumetric. Volume is not changing, and there is pressure increasing because it's contracting. So that's called isovolumetric contraction. The volume is stable, but because both the valves are closed, but it is contracting. So you could see during the isovolumetric contraction, the volume is stable. Once this valve opens, aortic valve opens, all the content is being pushed into the aorta. So what is going to happen to the, what we're discussing, ventricular volume and thus ventricles. Okay, so what is going to happen is it's going to fall. Okay, it's going to fall. Okay, I don't have space enough to draw it. Okay, I'll just draw like this. Okay, because I'll have to rub it probably, because I have to even give you the hard sounds and all. Okay, so till this stage again it falls. Okay, till a particular stage it falls. Then what is going to happen? Closure of aortic valve. This didn't open still. So again there is going to be an isovolumetric relaxation because there is no increase in volume. So here again there is nothing happening. Okay, there is isovolumetric. Actually this line is much more straighter. It's not like that, it's just falling, and one particular point it is straighter. Just see the picture. Okay, so I'm not drawing it so low. Okay, so it's isovolumetric relaxation. So pressure is not so volume is not changing. Pressure is falling, but volume is not changing. And you know, AV valve opens, atrioventricular valve opens. So there is a rapid filling, isn't it? There is going to be the rapid filling phase. So in the rapid, because of the diastole, there is rapid increase in volume. Okay, and then there is a slow filling phase. So though the volume is increasing, it's not so high. Okay, so rapid filling phase, quickly it increases. Then there is a slow filling phase, volume increases but much slower level. So this is the volume curve. Initial increase, this is isovolumetric contraction. Initial increase because of atrium being in the systole. isovolumetric, decrease because of once this valve opens, so it's pumped out. So decrease, then isovolumetric relaxation, rapid filling, slow filling. Okay, so I think I'll just drop this. Hope you have understood this. Okay, it's not correlated to the next things which you are going to discuss. I'll rep them and I'll show you the hard sounds when they are taking place. The hard sounds happen either when the AV valves closed, these two, atrioventricular valve, but as of now we are discussing only one side, so you can see only left ventricular pressure is changing. Basically it's two. Okay, so atrioventricular valve closes, that is where we have the first hard sound. So it's here in the hard sound is somewhere here. Okay, S1. Okay, aortic valve closure, sorry, atrioventricular valve closure, and you have the S2 here. Okay, S2 is here when you have the pressure in the aorta is increasing and the pressure in the ventricle is decreasing, isn't it? So that is initial period of systole, or I would say before isovolumetric contraction, just before the isovolumetric relaxation. So there is S2, and S3 is due to rapid filling. So it will be somewhere in the ventricular diastole stage, the rapid filling. So I'll just write it here, the rapid filling phase, S3, and S4 is due to atrial contraction. So it's S4 due to atrial systole. So S1, AV valve closure. So they will ask you where is the heart sounds being located. They will give you the picture. So you will be knowing theoretically, but you won't be able to, without learning this, you won't be able to represent it on a diagram. So S1 is here, S2 is here, aortic valve closure. S3 is rapid filling. See the diagram which I provided you. There is clearly mentioned this somewhere here. There is initially rapid filling and then slow filling. Okay, so S3 then S4 is here. Now the last part I want to discuss is the ECG. So what are components do they have? It's very easy now, Wiggers diagram. It has got ventricular pressure curves, atrial pressure curves, aortic pressure curves, ventricular volume, heart sounds, which is called phonocardiography. Okay, phonocardiography, heart sounds, and finally ECG. So you know atrial systole. Okay, hope you have gone through the lectures of ECG. Okay, I've given a very detailed description, including the leads and Einthoven's law and everything in the ECG lecture, including the leads. That is where many people don't understand things. Just understanding PQRS won't be helpful for you to solve things out. Okay, so now coming back, so atrial systole is what represents the P wave. Okay, then ventricular systole represents the initial part of ventricular systole represents the QRS complex. And please note, it is not the ventricular diastole which represents the T wave, it is the ventricular depolarization. So it will definitely be during this ventricular systole phase itself. So this is the T wave and it just continues, and all these are hidden part. I've explained them okay in the lectures, and then the things will start again when there is atrial systole. Okay, so there is P, Q, R, okay, S. Many a times S is not visible. Okay, P, Q, R, S, T. Okay, so this is what is Wiggers diagram. Very simple, isn't it? Though it looks very complicated, once you connect them, I think all these things would have become much more easy for you to understand. Okay, because naturally when I learned the Wiggers diagram, I felt it much more connecting things out together. Okay, why, where, what happens. Okay, so even hard sounds also is easily connectable now. Okay, even you can connect them with the hard sounds. So, and you can connect this hard sounds where exactly. So all these things are fall into one single perspective, isn't it? It becomes very easy. So hope you understood this. Okay, hope you understood this. Now I'll go on to some specific details about the aortic pressure curves. Okay, a little bit more understanding of the aortic pressure curves. Okay, please understand this. Majorly you can get questions on this IVC, IVR. Where does opening and closing of valves happen? Okay, and where does the sounds come at, and how to connect this atrial curves with the ventricular curves, where exactly this happens and all. They can give you anything in fact, but I'm just saying the most important things. Okay, so once you know this, once you like, I want you to draw it by yourself once or twice. It will become very, very simple. Okay, just draw it by yourself. Without that, it won't be very simplified. Okay, so I'll go next on to my next topic, which is aortic pressure curves, and I'll just wrap up this lecture. And in the next lecture, I'll be discussing with you about the cardiac outputs and the factors influencing the cardiac outputs. Next, I want to discuss with you is aortic pressure curve. I'll just write it like that. Okay, and in the aortic pressure curves, okay, a few details. Okay, just a small few details I want to discuss, not too much. Okay, now in the aortic pressure curves, we have already seen few things, that the pressure starts at 80. So 80, I'll just go 90, 100, 120. Okay, that has reached it 120. Now it starts very in a very simplified way. The pressure doesn't increase much. Okay, as you know, and when it reaches a particular pressure, the aortic valve opens, and there is a very great upstroke till 120, and you could see this is being named. Okay, this particular thing is being named as percussion wave. Okay, where you get that. So how it is measured, okay, that's also important. How it is measured is, you place a transducer in the carotid artery. Okay, so you get all these pressure changes, like we saw that how we measure the uh, JVP. So similarly, we place this transducer in the carotid artery, and you get a percussion wave, a very high upstroke. So this is known as percussion wave. Okay, just again, image-based questions, percussion wave. Okay, percussion wave. Physiology is much more important for knee AIMS than, or I would say INICET than NEET. Okay, so biochemistry is very less important. Even general medicine, they won't ask you much question in AIMS. When it comes to NEET, it's much more towards general medicine side, but here it is much more towards the physiology side. Okay, so there's a percussion wave. Then, as I told you, the aorta pumps its blood into the systemic circulation, so its pressure naturally falls. Okay, and at one particular level, though its pressure is falling, at one particular level, the pressure in the ventricle is so low or much lower than the aortic pressure. What happens is a very quick backflow happens. We have studied this. There is some dip. Okay, then there is a secondary recoil, and there is an increase, and finally it comes to the normal of 80. Okay, comes to the normal of 80. So this dip is known as dicrotic notch. Okay, this dip has got a very, this notch, it's a notch, so it's called as the dicrotic notch. Okay, this is called the dicrotic notch, very important. And this wave, this secondary wave, due to elastic recoil, it's called dicrotic wave. Dicrotic wave. Okay, this is called the dicrotic wave. And this one, I want you to understand one more thing. This one till here, okay, till here, you know that what till, because here there is a closure of the aortic valve. So till this region, you get ventricular ejection taking place, because right, aortic valve is still open. So they can ask you like this: dicrotic notch is used as a marker for what? Okay, what physiological activity? It's used as a marker for ventricular ejection. Okay, it's used as a marker for ventricular ejection. That's what dicrotic notch, because till then, what is kept open? The aortic valve is kept open. So that's just an MCQ. You know, it's very easy, but until and unless I tell you this, it won't still be there. Okay, so that's called that's where in ventricular ejection. So understand the dicrotic notch and dicrotic wave, which are two different things. Okay, it just comes down because of the blood is being completely pumped into the systemic circulation. Now, two very important thing I want you to understand here is two pressures. Now, you know, this much is the ventricular diastole. This much is the ventricular systole that we have already studied, isn't it? The closure of this aortic valve, and then starts the, or probably here starts the ventricular diastole, the dipping down. Okay, so you have to know that the highest pressure, highest aortic pressure achieved during systole, what? The highest aortic pressure achieved during systole, during ventricular systole, is known as systolic blood pressure, systolic BP, and the lowest blood pressure, or low, I would say lowest pressure in the aorta, or lowest aortic pressure, which is 80, being achieved during the diastole, is called the diastolic BP. So till now we were saying systolic BP, diastolic BP, we were measuring BP and all, but we don't know what exactly it represented, isn't it? It represented all these things. Okay, so the pressure fall because of the spread into the circulation, and that the pressure which was there in the aorta, that is what is basically being measured, okay, in your wrist and all. So that's diastolic BP, and the difference between these two, 120 minus 80, is called the pulse pressure. Okay, it's called the pulse pressure. Pulse pressure, which will come on to 40. Okay, so it's important to know the pulse pressure falls in shock, isn't it? So all this is something which comes in the pathological part of, not in the physiology. So when we go on to that part, we'll study this. So it's called the arterial pulse pressure. Okay, okay, that's all about the, okay, when this, okay, all this same thing. Okay, so hope you got these pulse things. Okay, they can ask you this percussion wave, dichrotic notch, dichrotic wave, what, where is exactly the systolic BP, because till now I'm sure many of you didn't know what exactly they mean by systolic BP and diastolic BP. So now you know what it is and what's the pulse pressure and all those things. Okay, in the next class we'll discuss much more about the cardiac output, which is much more easier topic to understand than any of this which we have discussed, because I would say the most important, the most confusing would have been ECG. Okay, and I want your review on ECG classes. Okay, just let me know how much you understood. Okay, in the next just in our premium WhatsApp group. Okay, just let me know what's your how much do you understand about the ECG classes and all those. Okay, I try to make it as simplified as possible, and I don't think cardiac output or electrophysiology of the heart was difficult, though people, again, it's a graphical representation thing, so again people find it uh, confusing. Okay, now I'll tell you a psychology behind this. Okay, just a minute. Okay, I'll tell you a psychology behind this. When you see a graph, right away, you know, we have a feeling, especially when it comes to the medical subject, everyone has got a feeling that it's tough. Right away, you see ECG, it's tough. You see JVP, it's tough. You don't try to what sort it out. You have to try to sort it out. What exactly it means? Okay, see what we saw right now. Okay, Wiggers diagram. It's not very difficult. The aortic pressure, it's not very difficult. All these are simple things. But once we are ready to apply it, I don't want you to apply everything now at this stage, because I told you you have to understand this very importantly, that the aim of you during the entrance preparation phase, during this year, it should be only getting a seat in a government college. That's it. Okay, whatever it requires for you to get a seat in government college, that is what you have to do, nothing else. Don't try to increase your knowledge. It's very quite natural when you understand these things. Okay, I've seen it. When you start understanding certain things, whether it's in medical subject or dental subject, people start, okay, now I understood ECG, so I'll see the pathological part of ECG. Let me see what happens in MI. Or now I've understood the Wiggers diagram, so I'll read what is the pathological basis of Wiggers diagram. Okay, what is the pathological basis of aortic pressures? Don't do that. Okay, it's good that you understood, but your aim is what? Not to increase your knowledge. Your aim is just and just to get that PG seat. Once you get there, okay, then you can do whatever you want, isn't it? You can sit and read physiology, sit and read biochemistry, sit and read any of the dental subjects, whatever you're specialized in. Okay, you want to specialize in whatever details you want, you can do it. You have 3 years in front of you and the entire life in front of you, not just 3 years. I want you people to realize that also. It's not, studying never stops. Okay, it should go on and on and on till you die. There is researchers being research there. Lifetime learning actually increases your lifespan. Okay, the more you learn, the more you have a lifespan. That's research is being proved that. So learning should be a continuous process. And another thing which unfortunately, very unfortunately, I have realized uh, is that uh, the more knowledge you have, the less ego you have. Okay, just I would say today is the day for graphical representations, isn't it? So it's like this. The more ego you have, the lesser the, or the more knowledge you have. So the more knowledge you have, the lesser. So if you represent this as ego, okay, and this as knowledge, K, okay. So the more knowledge you have, the lesser ego you have, lesser inferiority complex you have. Just understand this. It's not much applicable to your entrance preparation, but please understand. I find it very unfortunate nowadays. We can't blame anyone. Okay, I'm not blaming anyone in the sector. It's up to us. If you want knowledge, you have to go in search of it. Don't blame anyone. Don't blame your teachers or anyone for that. If you want knowledge, you have to go in search of it. Find it anywhere in the world. Okay, it's there. So the more knowledge, the lesser ego becomes. So I'll tell you what happened to all of us. We pass out, including me. I'm not talking anyone else. You pass out from your college, your knowledge is here, so you can understand the ego is here, inferiority complex is here, humility humility is also there. Okay, humility, the arrogance, unfortunately I see in some people is very very high. Okay, very very high, very unfortunate, very unfortunate. It should not happen. So then the knowledge increases. I have seen people who have reached maybe probably at this stage, or some people have been here. I've seen some people uh, who are such a humble people. I just don't want to name them. Such a humble. I just wonder how can that be possible. How much, because the person is world famous, the person is such a wonderful person, such a wonderful surgeon or whatever it is, but he's so humble. Okay, I've personally worked in a clinic, okay, with one of the most humble person I've seen in my life. Okay, I have done one of my courses with one of the most humble person I've ever met. So he was from, I just don't want to name him. He was from USA. Okay, Indian born American, and he was so humble. I just wondered. Because okay, I was sitting in his class, and I was shocked that the level of his knowledge first. Okay, it just boosted me off, and it was my initial days of BDS practice. Okay, so I was shocked by the way the knowledge he had uh, inside him, and right away the class was over. There was an incident took place, which again shocked me. The humility he had. So this is very important. The more knowledge you gain. So I want everyone listening to my lecture, to increase your knowledge in future, because 1 year is nothing, 10 months is nothing, you have a whole life to come. So this period, I want you to just, definitely your knowledge is increasing, isn't it? Wiggers diagram, you understood. So definitely your knowledge is increasing, but don't go behind knowledge. You have to, if you want to mug up something, mug up it. Forget about the knowledge you're going to get it from there. Forget it. Don't go for the textbook. You don't have time for that, unfortunately, at this stage. You don't have time for that. 21 subjects in 10 months, there is no time to get knowledge. The only time you have is to just do whatever is required. Okay, so this is for your future I'm talking about, because once you go from this academy, there is no one to teach you this, probably. I don't know. Okay, maybe someone will teach you in your life, the experience I got. Okay, so it's very important, and definitely it's naturally understood that the more the knowledge, the more the success in your life. Okay, success is not measured by the degree you have taken. Success is not measured by the money you are making. Success is measured by the peace of mind you have, okay, when you are sitting at your house. Okay, so even if you're going for a job, there is no peace of mind, it's fine, but when you come back to your home, if there is a peace of mind, that's success. Okay, and knowledge will give you that, okay, directly or indirectly. So I'll just stop it here. I just don't want to make the lecture further long. Okay, I'll stop it here. See you in the next class. Goodbye.